People who come in small, cheap cars often leave right away. For my mom's 60th birthday, I decided to take her and my daughter to a fancy restaurant that's always busy. But something unexpected happened. The restaurant manager started making fun of us, saying we looked poor. "Let's just go," my mom said angrily. But the manager just smiled meanly. Then all the other customers stood up together, glaring at the manager. My name is Rebecca Miller. I'm 28 years old, a single mom with a 3-year-old daughter. I separated from my husband because we had different values. After that, I decided to raise my daughter alone. When I told my mom, she welcomed us warmly. All the stress I had been feeling came out, and I started crying. Seeing me like that, my mom invited us to live with her. She's been alone since my dad passed away a few years ago. She said she'd be happy to have us, so I accepted her kind offer. My mother is turning 60 this year, and I wanted to do something special for her. So, I made a reservation at a fancy restaurant that's usually booked years in advance. I've always wanted to try it. I expected to wait a long time, but luckily, there was a cancellation, and I got a reservation for my mom's birthday month. When I told her, she was thrilled. Seeing her so happy made it all worth it. Finally, the day of our reservation arrived. I drove my mom and daughter to the restaurant. I never thought we'd have any problems. "You're Miss Rebecca Miller who made a reservation, right? Please come this way," said the host. The grand entrance was perfect for a high-end restaurant. My mom and I were amazed by the fancy decor. Only my daughter was her usual cheerful self. Seeing her, both my mom and I smiled. My mom looked so happy, and I felt like this was going to be a great day. "Sorry for the wait. Here's your appetizer." The server placed a salad in front of us with careful precision. Just looking at the dish made my mom and me excited. They even had a special menu for my daughter, which I thought was a nice touch. While we were enjoying our meal, my mom glanced around the restaurant. "I recognized that person, and that one over there, the one from TV." "Yeah," I replied with a smile, helping my daughter with her food. Then I thought, and looked around like my mom. Sure enough, I recognized many faces and felt like I had joined this glamorous world. It seemed like everyone was smiling at the sight of my happy mom and daughter. Even though the restaurant had been nice about our reservation, I had been worried about bringing my young child. But the friendly looks from people around us made me feel at ease. The appetizers were done, and the first main course was brought out. The elegant and lavish presentation made me instinctively take out my phone to snap a photo. Immediately, a staff member approached me. He was different from the person who showed us to our table and had a very displeased look, which made me feel a bit taken aback. "Excuse me, can you please not take photos?" he said. "Oh, I'm sorry. This is what happens with poor folks. Why do we even have people like you in our establishment? Who let you in?" "Huh?" I clearly heard his muttered comment, and it made me feel quite uncomfortable. Trying not to let it show, I looked down, not wanting to dampen my mother's spirits. But as I wrestled with my feelings, my daughter's crying brought me back to reality. She had dropped the bread she was eating on the floor, and her cries echoed in the quiet restaurant. Other patrons started turning their attention to us, and in a panic, I tried to soothe her. But the more I rushed, the less effective I was. That's when the rude staff member approached again. "Ma'am, you're disturbing the other patrons with the noise." "I'm so sorry. I'll calm her down right away." "You shouldn't bring kids to places like this," he said, his sarcasm evident. This time, my mother clearly heard him. She frowned and spoke softly but firmly to the staff member. "Your attitude is what's really tarnishing the reputation of this place." However, her words backfired. The staff's attitude became even more hostile. "You do realize this isn't a place for children, right? I was just letting you know. If you keep making a scene, should I call security?" His arrogance and rudeness made both me and my mother furious, but we realized that getting angry would only play into his hands. Taking a deep breath, I tried to remain calm. Beside me, I could hear my mother doing the same. "I truly apologize for the disturbance. My daughter has stopped crying. Can you give us a moment?" I said, trying to diffuse the tension. The staff member stood with his arms crossed, staring at us, clearly waiting for our next move. "Could you please calm down? You're inconveniencing other guests," he retorted sharply. To distract my daughter, I'd offered her some bread from my plate. Thankfully, it worked. She stopped crying and happily started eating. I let out a sigh of relief and shared a glance with my mom, trying once more to apologize to the staff before taking my seat. But instead of easing the situation, the staff looked even more irritated and confronted us again. Do you even understand what I'm saying? I'm telling you to leave. This restaurant is too upscale for you, the staff member insisted, his tone dismissive. But my daughter has calmed down now, I replied, trying to reason with him. She might cry again, right? And each time she does, you'll be disturbing everyone. This is supposed to be a fine dining restaurant. You're ruining the experience for others. We haven't even received half of our meal. We've already paid in advance, and we informed the restaurant about my daughter when we made the reservation. There shouldn't be a problem, I explained, feeling increasingly frustrated. So what? This is exactly why people like you with low standards shouldn't come here. If you keep this up, I'm going to call the manager, he retorted sharply. With that, the disgruntled staff member hurried off to the staff room. My mother and I were left speechless, stunned by his rudeness. How could someone be so disrespectful? Didn't he realize that his attitude was what was truly lowering the restaurant's standards? Despite this being a special celebration for my mother's 60th birthday, my mood was completely ruined. While I had caused a bit of a scene, I knew I couldn't be too confrontational about it. As my mother and I pondered our next move, the earlier staff member returned, this time with a man who appeared to be the manager. When I saw his face, I couldn't help but gasp. It was Daniel Thompson, my middle school classmate. Is that you, Rebecca? Daniel asked, seeming to recognize me. The staff member looked surprised and asked Daniel, do you know her? Feeling a wave of relief, I remembered Daniel as someone who was earnest and cheerful back in school, though quite reserved. He usually hung out in small groups separate from mine, but I remembered him because he once admitted he liked me. At that time, I was already dating someone else, so I turned him down. Despite that, we talked a few times. I hoped Daniel would address the staff's behavior now. Oh, Rebecca was my classmate, Daniel explained. Then he turned to me and asked, are you sure you should be here? Confused, I replied, what do you mean? I heard the rumor, you're a single mom now, right? People say single moms are usually broke. My restaurant is high-end. It'd be a problem if you said you couldn't pay later, Daniel said with a mocking smile, openly assessing me. His words hit me like a slap. I blinked in disbelief, remembering him as a kind person from our school days. It seemed he had changed a lot. How can you say that? I made a reservation and paid in advance, didn't I? I replied, trying to defend myself. You've always been headstrong, haven't you? Maybe that's why your husband got tired of you. You gotta know how to flatter sometimes, Daniel retorted. What does that have to do with anything? Why does it matter? I asked, feeling hurt and confused by his comments. Isn't that your compact car outside? He added sharply. What if it is? I replied with irritation, taken aback by Daniel's attitude. Daniel chuckled at my response. People who drive compact cars can leave. What? I was genuinely shocked by his statement. Didn't you notice when you parked? No one else here drives a compact car. Everyone's in Mercedes or something similar. Aren't you embarrassed to be so out of place? Daniel continued, looking at me with disdain. His words stung deeply. The Daniel I once knew, who had confessed his feelings for me, seemed to have vanished completely. He now sized us up with contempt. You look downright poor, not fitting for my restaurant. You understand the staff's position, so why don't you just leave? I was growing increasingly irritated by the way we were being treated, as if we were causing a scene and refusing to leave the restaurant. We had made a reservation and paid in advance, so we had every right to dine there. Judging us based on appearances was something I never expected from the Daniel I once knew. But after everything he said, there was no reason for my mom and me to stay. Even if the food was good, we didn't want to be in a place with disrespectful staff and a manager like Daniel. Daniel, you've changed. If this is how you're going to be, we're leaving, I stated firmly. Daniel seemed oddly satisfied with my decision. I'm living the dream. I'm definitely better off than you now. Don't think you can just casually call me by my first name. It's a shame you've changed, I replied sadly. Daniel smirked, clearly still holding on to old grudges. That's because you rejected me, making fun of me even though you're not that pretty. Well, at least I'm happier now. Isn't it refreshing? He chuckled and high-fived a staff member nearby, both sharing a laugh. It became clear to me that Daniel's terrible attitude stemmed from being rejected years ago. Say whatever you want. I'm certainly happier than someone who holds onto grudges for so long. I have a wonderful daughter and a kind mother. Let's go, Mom, I retorted confidently. My comeback seemed to amuse Daniel even more, as if he saw me as a sore loser. It frustrated me deeply, but I knew arguing with him now would be pointless. I never expected a former classmate to change so drastically. This day was meant to be a happy celebration. With these thoughts, I picked up my daughter and glanced at my mom. She, too, looked furious as she abruptly stood up. "You've mocked my daughter enough. We don't want anything to do with a place like this. As you said, we're leaving." "Right, everyone." My mom's declaration rang out loudly, echoing throughout the restaurant. Neither Daniel nor I knew who she was addressing. Then, to our surprise, all the diners who had been enjoying their meals began to stand up and get ready to leave. I was utterly stunned, trying to grasp what was happening. "Wait, everyone, what's going on?" I apologized for the disturbance. "We'll handle these rude individuals right away. Just give us a moment," Daniel exclaimed, trying desperately to stop the diners from leaving. But he was met with cold stares from every direction. Daniel looked visibly flustered, clearly not understanding the sudden turn of events. Two elderly men stepped forward, shouting, "How dare you treat Mrs. Miller like that? We've been coming here for years, but we won't be back." Daniel was left speechless as the reality of the situation sank in. Shouted at, Daniel looked around the restaurant with a fearful expression. Following the lead of the two elderly men, all the other diners started scolding Daniel. They expressed their gratitude towards my mother, thanking her for something I couldn't quite understand. Holding my daughter, I watched in astonishment from the sidelines. The people scolding Daniel were all well-known celebrities, politicians, and clearly wealthy individuals. I was baffled as to why they held my mother in such high regard. "Wait, what's going on here? What happened?" I asked, trying to make sense of the sudden turn of events. Daniel's face turned pale as he desperately tried to calm everyone down. The staff member next to him looked equally panicked. I glanced over at my mom, silently seeking an explanation. That's when she revealed a shocking truth. "All these people used to be regular customers of mine when I was a traditional sweets maker," she explained calmly. "What?" I exclaimed, completely taken aback. I knew my mom had made sweets, but I had no idea she catered to such prestigious clientele. One of the celebrities standing nearby chimed in, confirming my mom's statement. "Mrs. Miller's sweets were the best in the country," he praised warmly. My mom listened to these words with a mixture of pride and embarrassment. I may not be a professional craftsman anymore, but thanks to them, I certainly honed my skills. I'm truly grateful. In that sense, the customer is truly a god, my mother stated with a profound sense of gratitude. Her words resonated deeply with me. Daniel looked visibly shocked, his posture tense and his breath held. As my mom approached him, she spoke calmly yet firmly. "You too should cherish your customers. This restaurant means a lot to you, doesn't it?" Daniel's response was defensive and defiant. "Hey, cut it out. What's with this customer is God stuff? That's an outdated way of thinking these days." His outburst echoed through the restaurant, almost sounding like a cry of distress. But my mom remained composed, unfazed by his reaction. "Do you really think that caring for customers is just a passing trend?" she asked, her voice steady and unwavering. Hearing my mother's firm stance, Daniel struggled to find words. He appeared somewhat intimidated, yet he remained defiant and refused to accept her viewpoint. "We are the ones providing the food. We're more important than the customers. This is absurd. I am important. If your daughter Rebecca hadn't rejected me." Daniel paused, then continued with an arrogant proposition. "Apologize to me right now, and maybe I'll even consider making Rebecca my woman. It could be your way out of your struggling life. How does that sound?" He looked at me with a smirk. His words disgusted me deeply, and I sighed heavily. "I'm sorry, but honestly, I can't deal with you right now," I replied firmly, lowering my head in disappointment. Laughter rippled through the crowd around us, and Daniel's face flushed red with embarrassment. Despite thinking my response was clear, Daniel, with his misplaced confidence, seemed utterly unprepared for another rejection. "Why not? I have money, you know. You don't want to be looked down upon, right? And isn't it embarrassing to be a single mother? Women like you probably can't remarry, so I'm offering to take you." Daniel persisted, his tone condescending. "It's none of your business. Just because you have money doesn't guarantee happiness," my mom replied firmly, brushing him off. Daniel's face reddened even more in response to her rejection. I couldn't help but wonder if money was the reason behind Daniel's drastic change. They say money can corrupt, and witnessing it firsthand was eye-opening for me. How dare a single mother let you talk back to me? Daniel retorted, his frustration evident. At this point, I found Daniel's words increasingly irrelevant and pitiful compared to my mother's dignified response. Then, a booming voice interrupted from the back of the restaurant, startling all of us. We turned to see a middle-aged man entering the scene. Daniel's unease was palpable. "Daniel, what on earth are you doing?" the man demanded sternly. "Why is Dad here?" Daniel muttered, clearly caught off guard and uncomfortable with his father's sudden appearance. "I heard Mrs. Miller and her family were dining here, so I wanted to greet them." What's with all this commotion? The man who had appeared was Daniel's father. I hadn't seen him since middle school, but he seemed stern and dignified. Earlier, one of the staff had mentioned the boss, so this man must be the owner of the restaurant. "I appointed you as manager after hearing you lost your job, but the business is only declining." "Now I see why," Daniel's father said disapprovingly. "What, you saw?" Daniel stammered, clearly caught off guard. "Yes, I arrived earlier. I peeked in when I heard the commotion, and there you were insulting Mrs. Miller's family. With all the arrogant things you were saying, do you even realize how wonderful a person Mrs. Miller is?" Daniel's father interrogated him sternly, and Daniel was visibly sweating. "What? This old hag is supposed to be someone special?" Daniel retorted, his disrespectful tone clear. "Watch your mouth. Mrs. Miller helped fund the opening of this restaurant," Daniel's father reprimanded sharply. "Ha! This old lady has that kind of money?" Daniel muttered, surprised and somewhat incredulous. Of course, Mrs. Miller's husband owned a famous traditional candy store, and Mrs. Miller herself worked in the tough world of candy making, even as a woman. She's experienced so much more in life than you. I wish I could distill her wisdom and give you a taste, the owner said with evident frustration, then turned to address us directly. "I'm deeply sorry for the trouble my foolish son has caused. Come on, apologize." "Why should I? I'm the manager of this upscale restaurant. Didn't you trust my abilities enough to leave me in charge?" "This is my place. I make the rules," Daniel retorted stubbornly. "Enough of your arrogance. What have I done, entrusting someone like you with this responsibility? That's it. I'm so disappointed in you. You're never setting foot in this place again," the owner declared firmly. "What?" Daniel's mouth fell open in shock. He began to panic and tried to apologize to his father, but the owner's decision remained resolute. "You're apologizing to the wrong person. You should be apologizing to Mrs. Miller and her family," the owner concluded, leaving Daniel visibly shaken and regretful. "Please, I'm so sorry. I finally made it, and I don't want to lose it all over something like this," Daniel pleaded, his desperation evident. "And you're still going on about that, you unbelievable guy," the owner replied, shaking his head in disbelief. His shock was palpable, understandable given the situation. No parent wants to discover their child has behaved arrogantly and disrespectfully. If my daughter had acted similarly, I would have supported the same decision as the owners. We all looked at Daniel with cold stares. The owner then proceeded to explain how Daniel came to work at the upscale restaurant. It turned out Daniel had previously worked at a prestigious hotel but had fallen into gambling debts. Debt collectors caused disturbances at the hotel, leading to his dismissal. Feeling lost and desperate, Daniel had turned to his father, who worked at the upscale restaurant, and pleaded for a job. At that time, Daniel's father had been offered a promotion to become the CEO of the company, so he decided to pass the management of the upscale restaurant to his son while overseeing several other restaurants in the same chain. Initially, Daniel worked earnestly, and the owner trusted him. However, over time, sales at Daniel's restaurant began to decline significantly, leaving the owner perplexed about the cause. I've received complaints about Daniel's terrible attitude from the staff, but there was no concrete evidence, and I wanted to believe in him because he's my son. Today, the hope turned into certainty. "It's truly disappointing," the owner said, looking at Daniel with a heavy heart. Daniel appeared stunned, as if the realization had struck him like a bolt of lightning, and he started to apologize desperately. "Dad, please forgive me. I've been trying my best, haven't I? Rebecca, please speak to my dad for me," Daniel pleaded, turning to me for support. "What exactly should I say? We were classmates, remember? For old time's sake," I responded incredulously. "After how you acted. You're really something. You truly are the worst," I added, unable to hide my disappointment. Daniel's face fell further upon seeing my disdain. My mother and I were both shocked by his behavior and sighed in response. Following these events, Daniel lost his position as the manager of the upscale restaurant and was disowned by his father, leaving him homeless. It later came to light that Daniel had accrued new debts he had concealed. Despite earning a good salary, he had spent most of it on gambling and had mistreated his staff almost daily. Interestingly, he had shown favoritism towards one particular staff member who had often caused us trouble. This individual turned out to be Daniel's former college junior, whom Daniel had hired against better judgment. Due to the junior's problematic work attitude, he was also dismissed from the restaurant along with Daniel. Having lost everything, Daniel sank deeper into gambling to cope with his losses, struggling to repay his debts. It's clear he's not a good person. Despite Daniel's actions ruining my mother's 60th birthday celebration, we managed to salvage the day by gathering everyone from the restaurant and relocating to a hotel room for a party. Surprisingly, the hotel was owned by Daniel's father, who graciously allowed us to use the space as a gesture of apology. It turned into a memorable event where I made new friends and witnessed firsthand how beloved my mother is. Many of the guests had known her from her days as a traditional sweet maker, visiting her shop to buy sweets as gifts. Her enduring connections highlight her charm and kindness. Inspired by my mother's example, I aspire to become a role model for my daughter just as my mother has been for me.